Hey guys, this is the last week of the first 9 weeks of school. So just keep that in mind this week as you work. All of your assignments up until through this week are all due by midnight on Thursday. So we got to post those first grades for the first 9 weeks. So just keep that in mind. After this week, you won't be able to access any former assignments. They'll all be locked. Okay. All right. So this week, you guys are starting a brand new unit. We're going to look at some numerical expressions and algebraic expressions. And when we say algebraic, that just means we're going to introduce variables into math. That means letters. So the very first problem that you see here, we have a 6 that's being multiplied together 5 times. So if we're going to write this in exponential form, that means we need an exponent. So 6 is our base. That's the number being multiplied over and over again. And so we would write a little bitty 5, and that would be, you would say the 6 to the 5th power. And 6 to the 5th power means exactly this: 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. Like I said, the 6 is called the base, and the 5 is called the exponent. E-X-P-O-N-E-N-T. So since you're all using your calculators now, you can multiply that 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, and that equals 7,776. All right, on your calculator, if you have one of the TI-30XS multi-view calculators that I asked, suggested you guys get, then it looks like this. There's actually an exponent button. It looks like half a triangle. It's called a caret button, C-A-R-A-T, I think. But basically, if you're going to use this button, that's how you make an exponent. So if you have this Texas Instrument calculator that I sent you guys a link to, you would type in a 6, you would hit that caret button, and on your calculator screen it would make a little tiny box to show that here's an exponent, and then you would type 5, and then you're going to hit the enter button. So let me do that: 6 caret 5. And it gives you the answer 7776. Okay, if you need more help with that, make sure you join me on during my office hours. Okie doke. All right, so let's look at the second one. So you would say this 5 to the 2nd power, or anytime this is a 2, you could say 5 squared. So this literally means 5 multiplied together twice. So 5 times 5 is 25. Okay. This, we would say 3 raised to the power of 3, or we could say 3 to the 3rd power, or anytime that's a little 3, you would say cubed. Whoops, cubed. A little 2 is always squared. Oh, and your calculator has a squared button also. So on this one, I would hit 5. There's an x to the 2nd power button. And that just means whatever number it is that you type in, you're going to square it by itself and you get 25. But if their exponent is anything other than a 2, you have to use the caret button. So I would write 3 caret 3. And what is 3 times 3 times 3? That's 27. All right, letter C, 2 is our base, 4 is our exponent. So I would say 2 to the 4th power, or I could say 2 raised to the power of 4. So this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 times 4 is 16. So 2 to the 4th power is 16. And then letter D, we would multiply 2/3 together 3 times. So we would say 2/3 cubed, or 2/3 to the 3rd power. So 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3. So we would say 2 times 2 times 2 is 8 over 3 cubed is 27. And there's our answer. And of course, if they were both even, we could simplify them, or if they both could be, oh, actually, they can both be divided by 4. I was about to say that. 8 and 20, no, just kidding. It's not, 27 can't be divided by 4, 28 can. So anyway, pretend I didn't say that. All right, number 3, you could put this right in your calculator. You could say 5 caret 3, whoops, 5 caret 3. Let me do it. 5 caret 3, and then you have to right arrow. You have to right arrow the big circle that has the arrows on them. You have to get out of that exponent by hitting the right arrow, and then you could put plus 6 and then the squared button, and your calculator will tell you immediately it's 161. Or you could do it the old way. You could say 5 times 5 times 5 equals, and your answer is 125. And then you could say 6 times 6, which is 36. And then finally, if you add 125 and 36, you still get 161. All right, letter B, we have 9 squared, which is 81, minus 3 to the 4th power is 81. So guess what 81 minus 81 is? 0. That's right, it's 0. All right, here we go. So here it says, I want to find the volume of a cube. Each side of the cube is 4 inches. Write the answer in exponential form, and then also write the answer in standard form. So one thing about a cube is all sides are the same length. So to find the volume of a cube, you're going to cube each side. So the side is 4. So basically exponential form, the volume would be 4 cubed. That's why we say cubed when we see a 3. It's like what you do when you find the volume of a cube. Okay, so what is 4 to the 3rd power? Well, 4 to the 3rd power is 64. And since we have inches times inches times inches, we would say 64 inches cubed, or 64 cubic inches. Same thing. What about number 5? I want to find the volume of a cube. Each side of the cube is 1/2 inches. Find the volume of the cube. So the volume is the side length cubed. So that's the exponential answer. Or if I'm going to write it in standard form, I'm going to say 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. Well, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And inches times inches times inches is inches cubed, or cubic inches. So that's how you do those two problems. All right, on this one, we're going to move on to order of operations. Everyone has to answer these long expressions in the same way, or we'd all get different answers depending on how we solve them. So we use this saying, we use a saying that says, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or some people say PEMDAS. PEMDAS. All right, so if you will follow this order, you'll always get math problems correct. So the P means parentheses. If you have an expression inside a set of parentheses, you will do those first. The second, the E means exponents. After you do the expression inside parentheses, you would do exponents next. Now, M and D are beside each other because you do whatever comes first in the problem from left to right. Either you multiply or divide next. If division is actually written first in the problem before multiplication, you would divide first. And the same thing with adding and subtracting. These are next to each other because it's not always add before you subtract. It's whichever comes first in the problem. So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide, and then the last thing is add and subtract in order from left to right. Okay, so look at this first problem right here, letter A. we got to start with an expression in parentheses. So we do have that. 14 minus 5 is 9. So I'm going to write 3 to the 4th power divided by 9 times 2. So there's parentheses. What about E? Do I have any exponents? I sure do. I have 3 to the 4th power. So 3 raised to the 4th power is 81. So my next step would be 81, and I'm going to write everything else again. All right, so I took care of parentheses, exponents, and now I multiply and divide whichever comes first in the problem. Well, in this problem, division comes first. So that's what I must do first. So 81 divided by 9 is 9. I'm going to write 9 times 2. And finally, I multiply 9 times 2 and I get 18. Now, the great thing about these calculators is if you'll type this in your calculator exactly the way it's written, including the parentheses, it'll give you the answer right away. So you have to make sure you type it in exactly like you see it. So 3 to the 4th power divided by parentheses, 14 minus 5 parentheses, times 2, and my calculator immediately tells me the answer is 18 because your calculators are set up in the order of operations. All right, let's get rid of all this stuff. So the second one, let's start with parentheses. Now, this is a parentheses, right? A set of parentheses, but this isn't an expression. This is just keeping that 1/2 together. It wants to make sure we cube the whole thing, 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. But anyway, we're going to get rid of these parentheses first. So I'm going to write 7 plus. Well, 10 minus 4 is 6, and that 2 belongs to that 6. Divided by 4 times 1/2 to the 3rd power. All right, now we're going to do exponents next. So 7 plus 6 squared is 36. Divided by 4 times, this says 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. We did this problem earlier. This is an 8. All right, next we do multiplication and division, whichever comes first. So we're going to do this first. So 36 divided by 4 is 9. So I'm going to rewrite that up here. So 7 plus 9 times 1/8. Well, now I have to multiply. Last thing I can do is add and subtract. So I have to multiply. So I'm going to say 7 plus, well, 9 over 1 times 1 over 8 is 9/8. And then I'm going to put that in my calculator because it has an N over D button. So my calculator, I'm going to put 7 plus. I'm going to use my N over D button, and I'm going to make this be 9 over 8 by using the arrow buttons. So 7 plus N over D, I'm typing in 9, arrow down 8, equals, my answer is 65 over 8. 65 over 8, I can change that into either a mixed number. So 8 will go into 65 8 times with 1 left over, and I'm going to leave it in that form. Now my calculator won't do that part, okay, just so you know. All right, now the rest of these on this page, these are words that help you know what you're doing. Either you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So if I see the word sum, this box over here tells me I'm going to add, right? If I see find the difference, I know that means to subtract. If I see something that tells me to find the product, I know that means to multiply. And finally, if I see the word quotient, that means that I'm about to divide two numbers. Now, obviously, I only used one word from each column, but you should be familiar with all of these. Okay, so make sure you look back at these boxes and make sure you understand that if I see the words increase by, that means I know I'm going to be adding. Now, when we use a letter to represent an unknown value in math, we call that a variable. So if you're told the phrase a number or a variable or some number or unknown value, you're going to use a letter to represent that unknown value, okay? We already talked about cubes, powers. That means like 2 to the power of 3 or 2 cubed. Squared always means a little 2, like 5 squared will be 5 to the second power. All right, so we're going to practice writing some algebraic expressions. So if I say 6 added to a number, well, I don't know what number, so I'm going to use a letter. So I'm going to use an X to represent an unknown number. So 6 added to a number. There we go. That's my algebraic expression. This is 5 squared. 5 squared. That one was easy. The product of, so product of course means to multiply. 6 and some number. So 6 times a number, 6 times X. I just squish those together and that represents multiplication. And then D says the quotient of 25 and 5. So I'm dividing 25 by 5. Or I could write it this way as well, the quotient of 25 and 5. Now I couldn't reverse the numbers and put 5 divided by 25. That's not correct. All right, it says order is important, especially in division and subtraction. 20 divided by 4 is not the same as 4 divided by 20. So especially with division and subtraction, you have to follow the way the numbers are written in the problem. 20 divided by 4, if you wrote 4 over 20, that is not right. That's what this says. This, the first one would have to be 20 divided by 4, which is 5. The other one's going to give us an answer of 1/5. So the difference between 10 and 7, we must write the 10 first. Because 10 minus 7 is not the same as 7 minus 10. 7 minus 10, we'd get a negative number. But 10 minus 7 is 3. The quotient of 20 and 4 would be 5, or of course I could write it this way. The quotient of 20 and 4 is 5. Now, when you see these 3 terms right here, you are actually going to reverse the numbers. And these are especially less than. That's the most popular one that I see. And if you don't reverse the numbers on that one, that would technically be correct, because if you don't have the order correct for subtraction, you're going to get a different answer. So it says 5 less than a variable. That means we're switching these. That term less than means we're switching the order. So we're going to start with a variable minus 5. This is how you write 5 less than a number. And then here's another one, 20 subtracted from. That's one of our reverse numbers, reverse orders. We're going to trade places. So I'm going to write a number. It could be any number. It doesn't have to be X. A number. So now this is 20 subtracted from a number. All right. So that is the correct way to write that. All right. So you guys pause and practice writing these and come back and check your answers. So 3 less than what? 3 less than what? The sum of a number and 9. So I'm going to write the sum of a number and 9. And then 3 less than that. Remember, this is one that you throw at the end. It's a reverse order. Okay, so I hope you got that right. This is exactly the right way to write it. If you wrote any other way, it's not correct. The sum of 4 and the sum of 4 and what? The product of some number and 8. Okay, so the product of some number and 8. So 8 times a number is 8x. Now I realize I did reverse the order on that one, and it's okay because 8 times x is going to equal exactly the same as 8x. So isn't 8 times 3 the same thing as 3 times x? So reversing the order doesn't matter. But anytime you have a digit with a variable, it's going to be written like this 95% of the time. So the sum of 4, sum means plus. So the sum of 4 and the product of a number and 8. That's how you write that. The product of 5 and, that stays together, the product of 5 and the quantity of 40 minus a number. So 40 minus a number, all of that stays together, times 5. And that's the way that's written. Or you could do a little dot there to show multiplication. Now, when we start using variables, you stop using x's to represent multiplication because that's confusing. But guys, you have to have a parentheses here. If you write it like 5 times 40 minus x, you must have parentheses to keep this part together, because this is the quantity of 40 minus a number. And if you just write 40 times x minus x, or 40, you know what I mean? Order of operation makes you do this part first, which is not what number 12 says. Okay, so this isn't right. These other two are correct. A number to the power of 5 times 3. A number to the power of 5, there we go, times 3. Now, like I said earlier, if it's a number times a variable, like this one is, if you wrote 3x to the 5th, 3 times x to the 5th, that's correct also. It's not 3x to the 5th, it's just 3 times x to the 5th. So both of these are okay. The product of 2 and the sum of a number and 4. So how do you write the sum of a number and 4? Sum means add. The sum of a number and 4. We want to find that, and the product of 2. 2 times, now this is together again, right? The sum of a number and 4 is together, times 2. So we could either drop that multiplication dot or we leave it. It's the same thing. These are the same. But if you don't have parentheses, if you say 2 times x plus 4, that's not right, because order of operation would make us multiply only these together and then add 4, which is not what it says. So this is not right. The product of 2 and what? The product of 2 and a number plus 4. Oh, that's the same thing we just did. A number plus 4, the product of 2. Oh, wait, this is not the same. I'm sorry. Let me look at that again. All right, so look at number 14. I think I put in this as kind of a tricky question. I almost tricked myself. All right, so 14 says the sum of a number and 4. That's why we have to keep those together. But this doesn't say that. It says the product of 2 and a number plus 4. The product of 2 and a number, the product of 2 and a number plus 4. So now that is correct. So they were different. The sum of kept this part together, but here I didn't see sum of down here. Okay, so that was a really, really close, but they are actually 2 different answers. All right, guys, I hope that helped. If you need help this week, reach out to me and I will get back to you. All assignments are due by Thursday night, midnight. All right, you guys, y'all have a great week and I will talk to you guys soon.